Good morning, Dan and Amy. Interesting piece by Rich Thau at CNN.com, no less. The voters who are still backing Trump. Rich Thau is the president and co-founder of a research firm called Engageus, specializes in message testing and message refinement for trade associations and advocacy groups. He's been doing focus grouping as part of this swing voter project. He writes, I understand pollsters are consistently telling us Biden is far ahead of Trump. I'm not looking to pick a fight as their sample sizes are much larger than mine. That said, as a focus group moderator, I'm hearing strong support for President Trump from a critical sliver of the electorate. Each month for the past 17 months, I've had a unique window into the Americans largely responsible for giving President Trump his slim electoral college victory, the so-called Obama-Trump swing voters across the upper Midwest. Our swing voter project has uncovered that many of these people who live in places such as Canton, Ohio, Davenport, Iowa, Erie, Pennsylvania, Macomb County, Michigan, prefer Trump over Biden. In fact, 22 of 33 respondents in these four most recent locations feel this way. And over the first year of the project, that was March 19 through February 2020, more than two-thirds of the Obama-Trump voters said they would take Trump over Obama in a hypothetical matchup. That's atrophied a bit in the intervening 6 months, perhaps, but still, perhaps underestimating the strength of Trump's base voters and their stickiness. And this seems to be something the left consistently does. Perhaps it's just a matter of self-delusion. There was a piece of Daily Beast this week. Trump campaign worried about his base crumbling. I don't think so. I don't think so. And the reason his base is not going to crumble, even when they don't like what he does, is because he has largely done or attempted to do what he said he would as a candidate. And he's also been able, I think, largely, to convey the feeling that even when it's uncomfortable, how he fights for you, he's fighting for you. He is on your side of the skirmish line, fighting out against those who said they would represent you for generations and did not, and silenced you, really, before even the cancel culture took hold. There was something Trump did yesterday that I thought was really, this was Tuesday actually, that I thought was really interesting, and it shows for anybody who thought, oh, he doesn't even want to win. These ridiculous. This is a guy who absolutely wants to win, and he's showing an ability to be resilient in a way that I don't think Biden or the Democrats can be. They're too, basically consumed with navel gazing. Trump, the other day, talking about Tony Fauci and Fauci's popularity versus his. Listen to all the way to the end. This is important because he did the same thing in one of those Sunday talk show interviews just a few days ago as well.
I have a very good relationship with Dr. Fauci. It's sort of interesting. We've listened to Dr. Fauci. I haven't always agreed with him, and that's, I think, pretty standard. That's okay. He did not want us to ban put up the ban to China when China was heavily infected very badly, Wuhan. He didn't want to do that, and I did, and other things. And he told me I was right, and he told me I saved tens of thousands of lives, which was generous. But it's, I think it's fact. Then I did the ban on Europe. But I get along with him very well, and I agree with a lot of what he said. So, it's interesting. He's got a very good approval rating, and I like that. It's good. Because remember, he's working for this administration. He's working with us, John. We could have gotten other people. We could have gotten somebody else. It didn't have to be Dr. Fauci. He's working with our administration. And for the most part, we've done pretty much what he and others, Dr. Birx and others who are terrific, recommended. And he's got this high approval rating. So why don't I have a high approval rating with respect, and the administration with respect to the virus? We should have a very high, because what we've done in terms of, we're just reading off about the masks and the gowns and the ventilators and numbers that nobody's seen, and the testing at 55 million tests. We tested more than anybody in the world. I have a graph that I'd love to show you. Perhaps you've seen it, where we're up here and the rest of the world is down at a level that's just a tiny fraction of what we've done in terms of testing. So it sort of is curious A man works for us, with us very closely, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx, also highly thought of, and yet they're highly thought of, but nobody likes me.
And he went on to say, I guess it must be my personality. So two things. One, being gracious to Fauci and Birx. That's smart. But that the whole thing, he did the same thing about his personality at the Sunday interview. Being self-effacing, which runs counter to, the Trump persona and the criticism of Trump. I think that's purposeful. I think it's really smart. I think that sort of temperance is going to be wildly helpful to him. And the other thing it does, it gets you off his personality and focus. Okay. He even concedes that he's abrasive, that he's not always, the most charitable person and so forth. But maybe I should think about the substance of what he's done. It is true that he employs Tony Fauci. He could bring in, John Ioannidis from Stanford or something. He probably should have a long time ago.
Yes.
But he could do that. He's not done that. He has been very charitable and gracious to Fauci and Birx, who I like and who I respect. He recognizes his shortcomings, his personality, and why he rubs people the wrong way. Maybe I should think about what he's actually done rather than just his persona. I think it's really interesting, this pivot that he's made just in the last few days. For more on all of this, the messaging as we move into the 90-day sprint here, we're pleased to be joined by former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, also 2012 presidential candidate, of course, New York Times bestselling author of the recently released Trump and the American Future, Solving the Great Problems of Our Time. Speaker Gingrich, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Listen, I'm delighted to be with you, and I thought that was actually a fascinating discussion you were having about Trump and Fauci and how the whole coronavirus thing has evolved.
Yeah, I mean, do you see that as well, or am I reading too much into that? That the self-effacing Trump is a better Trump?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think he has realized, at least I hope he has realized, that the country really wants him to be inclusive and concerned and presidential because we have some real problems. I mean, this is, when you take everything and wrap it into one, the government imposed depression, the government imposed isolation, the disease itself, et cetera. Now, this is probably the biggest crisis we've had as a country since World War II. And I think people want to have a leader who is stable and reassuring. And that, Trump did a great job of being somebody who broke up the old order. And as long as we were in prosperity and safety, people, I think, were very happy to have him take on the deep state and have him rattle the cage and change things. But I think now that they're seeing all these other factors, I think that they really want reassurance, and I think it's much more effective for him to focus on being reassuring.
Well,
and that's part of why I wrote Trump and the American Future. I think that he is a remarkable figure who has achieved a great deal, and I think this election is probably the most decisive choice since Abraham Lincoln in 1864, in that if you end up with a Biden, Pelosi, Schumer world, it'll be so radically different from the world you would have had. It's amazing.
Yeah, I see it as a choice between law and order with President Trump and then complete anarchy if Biden becomes president. How do you see it?
No, I think that's right. For some reason, the Democrats have become pro-criminal and anti-police. And, of course, as you know, when you look at, for example, one weekend alone in which New York and Chicago have 152 Americans shot, you have to say there's something profoundly wrong. And I think that's part of what Trump is grappling with. And, of course, Biden is totally owned by the people who are committed to very weak laws, very, minimizing the effect of the police, maximum bail opportunities, et cetera. And there's been an explosion of crime in cities that are run by Democrats because their core policies and their court structures just don't work. Now you have Seattle, which is not only crippling the police, it's talking about actually closing prisons, and let's not put people in prison. Which, if you're dealing with a predator who goes around shooting people, you have an obligation to keep them away from the rest of society. But the Democrats have bought this stuff in a way that's weird. And I tweeted yesterday that, a number of the police forces in Wisconsin are now saying that they will not help protect the Democratic Convention because the city of Milwaukee is adopting rules that make it impossible for them to deal with crowds. And I just tweeted, this could be a great test. Given what left-wing Democrats say, maybe they should not have any security. And let's see if Antifa and the predators and the criminals will play nice. And if you had a Democratic convention with zero police and zero security, if their theories are right, there shouldn't be any problems.
That's right. You just have an army of social workers at the ready, right?
That's right. You have people there who are willing to counsel with you and give you therapy so that you'll feel better.
Right. While you're throwing an M80 at, while they're taking incoming M80s. Yeah, right.
Right, exactly.
So we have less than...
If only there had been enough social workers in Portland, there never would have been a problem.
Right.
Exactly. So what should President Trump's platform be? We have, 96 days until the election. Should he focus on reopening schools, the economy, the new, what do you
think you have to distinguish. Look, as president, he has to focus on reopening the schools because every single report we get from doctors and from medical people is that children are much better off if they go back to school. And frankly, he ought to fight for a provision that says if your school district will not reopen, then the money ought to be given to the parents to go get their kids educated. I mean, you have some school districts and counties that have $3 billion budgets. And if they're not going to reopen, why are we paying them $3 billion?
Well,
I think in that sense, as president, he has to focus on education. As a candidate, he ought to draw a sharp distinction between the future he offers, getting back to the lowest black unemployment, the lowest Latino unemployment, the lowest female unemployment, the things he's already accomplished once. And he has to focus, we just launched a terrific explorer to the moon, to Mars. He ought to focus on positive achievements, the breakthrough with the viruses. We will have, I think, at least 3 different vaccines available late this year. The number of things he's done to break through the system and to bring free enterprise to bear, the production systems, is astonishing. And the bureaucracy's failed, and Trump stepped in and got the private sector to fill the gaps.
And the Senate Republican COVID relief legislation does include 10% of the money that they have earmarked for school reopenings to be in the form of scholarships for schools that do remain closed, as you suggest, one of the perhaps only redeeming provisions of that legislation. I wanted to get your reaction to the Joe Biden campaign message. It seems to me it's a little bit of Warren Harding redux, right? Return to normalcy. And we had this conversation with James Pogue, who's an essayist who wrote a piece over at Harper's Magazine, spent a month in Kenosha, Wisconsin in the run-up to the Biden-Sanders primary, and then spent a little time after talking to a lot of people in that swing area, in that swing state, who voted for Trump last go-around. And one of the things that he suggests is this idea of, going back to some fictitious normal is actually the most dangerous message that Joe Biden could adopt because, number one, it's not possible. People don't believe there is any sort of normal that we're going to go back to. Number two, his own party doesn't want to go back to whatever that normal was. They want revolution, as we're seeing play out in the streets in part, and certainly with the rhetoric of the backbenchers like AOC. And so it's not a credible message, and it's not something that is animating to the base of his party. Do you agree that the return to normalcy, it sounds good on its face, but it's a guaranteed loser for Biden?
Oh, yeah, there has not been Harding's a good example. Because Harding, of course, was in a different era, and back then it actually did mean something because it was coming out of World War I and a very deep depression, which had lasted a very short time. The Depression of 1920-21 was only about 18 months. And of course, the Spanish flu. So he could use it in a way that people believed it. But first place, anything Biden proposes which suggests it would require strong, energetic leadership is a dead loser. I mean, I tell people all the time, when you think about Xi Jinping, the General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party, President of China, who's a very tough, smart guy, and you say to yourself, all right, we need to put an American president in to negotiate with him. Do you want a tough guy like Trump, or do you want a guy like Biden who will fall asleep halfway through the meeting? And that's why I think Biden has a problem. And I think there's nothing Biden can offer. He can make promises. Ultimately, it's going to be Biden, Schumer, and Pelosi as a team. They're going to offer extraordinary left-wing ideas. I mean, Pelosi got 207 Democrats to vote for a $1,200 bonus for every illegal immigrant. Now, why you would want a Pelosi bonus for illegal immigrants is, you have to be pretty far to the left to think this is a clever idea. That's the sort of stuff that they're into, and they just, I think they get further and further away from the average American.
He is former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, 2012 presidential candidate as well, as we all know. New York Times bestselling author, the most recent offering, Trump and the American Future, Solving the Great Problems of Our Time. Speaker Gingrich, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
Yeah, always a pleasure. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper, hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
My wife and I have had this conversation 700 times. Honey, where would you like to go for dinner? Oh, I don't care. Whatever you think. Okay, how about Restaurant 1? Oh no, definitely not Restaurant 1. How about Restaurant 2 instead? Oh, please don't ever make me go back to Restaurant 2. And it soon becomes clear that we need a restaurant advisor for a decision that big. It's Ryan, and in many ways, our Faith and Family Mortgage team is kind of like a restaurant advisor, but for mortgages. We're big on presenting you with your options and then letting you decide. As in, refinancing to a 30-year loan will make your payment this and save you that over the 30 years. Or a 20-year refinance will mean this and that, or you could cash out this much of your current equity and end up